Hello, good evening, and welcome to Athens City Council. This is a regular session of council. I will be sitting in as President Pro Tem for Jim Sands. I will also be an active voting member this evening. Today is December 1st. Welcome back from the long holiday weekend. Hope everyone enjoyed the weekend. We'll establish a quorum. It looks like we have all members of council here to vote. Disposition of minutes. Is there a motion to accept the regular session of minutes from November 17th, 2014?
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of adopting the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The minutes have been adopted. Communications. Any communications from elected officials, beginning with Mayor Weil?
Oh, I thought usually it's council first, no? Okay, a couple things. Let's see. First of all, SOPEC, which is Southeast Ohio Public Energy Council, it's a regular body, COG, Council of Governments, so therefore this is a public notice. We normally have our meetings on Mondays at 3 o'clock. Next week we'll have it on Wednesday at 3 p.m. At the Commissioners' meeting room. That's December 10th. Regular meeting, just so you know what's going on there. Other things, I've been told I should warn everybody about the weather. So just want to let you know about the weather.
Thank you.
I received this today. This is a certification. We are now, so congratulations, Mayor Weil, for the designation of certified local government. Pleased to present you with a certification documenting your achievement. Actually, it's not my achievement. It's part of the Historic Preservation Committee and my city planner, Paul Logue, and a lot of citizens involved in that. So we are now a certified local government, which I believe gives us one rung up in terms of chasing grants as well as being certified, I guess.
Yes, that was in our comprehensive plan. That was one of the goals of the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
It's great because it does give us more competition. It's better competition for grants for us.
Well, that's a good thing, right?
Yes.
It is. There you go.
More competition.
I think it's a good thing, as you say, and as I say, it's one more check mark of our comprehensive plan.
It's probably also worth mentioning that there's only 62 or 63 cities in the state of Ohio that have this certification or this designation. So this is a big deal.
So we're moving forward on that. Let's see. I have, in anticipation of the Bulldogs, I have a proclamation too. Let me read it here. Whereas the Athens Bulldog team was victorious in the Ohio High School Athletic Association Division III, I guess that's OSHA, Division III state semifinal on November 28th, 2014 at Woody Hayes Quaker Stadium in New Philadelphia, defeating Akron St. Vincent St. Mary's by a score of 34-31. And whereas Athens will face Toledo Central Catholic on December 4th, 2014 at 7:30 p.m. at Ohio Stadium in Columbus, Ohio for the OSHA Division III State Championship. And whereas the wonderful season is due to the hard work and dedication of the football players of the Athens football team, which includes the outstanding senior class, the leadership of the head coach, Ryan Adams, and the commitment of the Athens cheerleaders and marching band and the support of the Athens community in general. And whereas Athens stands at a record of 14-0 and will compete for the first ever state championship. Now, therefore, I, Paul Weil, Mayor of the City of Athens, do hereby proclaim this Thursday, December 4th, 2014, as Athens Bulldog Football Day in the City of Athens, and residents are encouraged to wear green and gold as we support our student athletes as they compete for a championship, a state championship. And that's it right there.
Thank you, Mayor.
And you want to wish them luck whenever possible. And again, it's a big deal. Unfortunately, that's the same day Santa shows up, I think, downtown. But maybe he'll be a present. And the last item I have is, I noticed then ordinance number 12414. This is ordinance establishing salaries for elected officials. This is for the next term of office. With that in mind, I want to tell you that I probably will not run again. And I just want to make that official. Probably a day doesn't go by or a week doesn't go by where I get 2 or 3 requests from whether I'm running or not. So just to kill the speculation on that, I'm not going to run again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Weil. The mayor was correct in acknowledging that I skipped the communications of our fellow council members here. We'll jump back to council members. There are communications from council members here before we do the rest of the elected officials. So communications from other elected officials. Law Director Lang.
Congratulations and good luck to the Bulldogs, and beyond that, no report, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Auditor Hecht.
I just have a couple of quick things. I wanted to let council and everyone know that our tax revenue is flat. We are at this point in the year up 0.5% over last year, which isn't anything. But we have not gone down any, and we are on track for our projections, so our budget should be fine. And that being said, we didn't use all our refund money in the tax line this year. We expect to have about $80,000 left in that one this year, so that'll help for the general fund. That's it.
Thank you, Auditor. Thank you. There's no other comments. We'll be moving on to ordinances for third reading. Ordinance 8914, an ordinance amending Athens City Code, Title 5, Public Utilities, Chapter 5.02, Garbage and Rubbish, Section 5.02.03, Preparation and Storage, introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adopt 8914. Second. We've been talking about this for several months, and I think that it's been thoroughly discussed. Unless anybody has found typos or anything, point them out now. And
Thank you. Is there any comment from the public regarding Ordinance 8914 or council members? Any comment? Go ahead. Member
Just
Nisley.
say a thank you to the citizens who've worked on the code committee for about a year, and along with city staff, council members who've worked on the language on it and worked through what we hope is something that's workable. I know it's going to be a tough period of time. We've delayed the implementation of it to June 1, where we had originally begun January 1. So our task now is also educating the public between now and then about the new regulations, and also a reminder of our current regulations on trash.
Thank you. Any other comments? Mayor's office?
Well, I would hope that we would continue down the endeavor that I thought we were making, which would be towards uniform cans and then also single-stream recycling. So perhaps we can make some headway here in the next 6 months towards that endeavor.
Thank you. Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the ordinance signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? 1. Aye. The ordinance passes with a vote of 6-1. Moving on to ordinance 10914, an ordinance amending Athens City Code Title 9, General Regulations, Chapter 9.15, Parks, Open Spaces, and Nature Preserves. Section 9.15.02, Use of tobacco, tobacco products, or tobacco derivatives prohibited, and Title 13, General Offenses, Chapter 13.07, Miscellaneous Offenses, Section 13.07.06, Littering Public Ways. And this is introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. President Pro Tem. I'd like to make a motion to adopt Ordinance 109-14.
Second.
Thank you. Again, this is one more step on the pathway to having a healthier city environment by having the parks, the city parks and recreation spaces become tobacco-free, as well as changing Title 13, which is the section on littering of public ways, to where that also includes tobacco products as a litterable offense within the city of Athens, because cigarette butts are litter.
Thank you, Mayor Patterson. Is there any public comments? Member
I'd like to point
Fall.
out, that Ohio OU is going to become a totally smoke-free campus. And so my concerns which this helps to address, is that it's just pushed onto public places, and that the litter of cigarette butts and stuff will increase. And it should be noted that cigarette butts are considered fairly toxic because of the amount of byproducts that are in it that can get into our watershed. So.
Thank you. Any other comment from council members?
I would just add that this is something that came out of a presentation and being approached by a citizen and parent in the community, and I'm glad that council has taken it up and moved forward with this ordinance to make Athens a more healthful, sustainable community.
I too want to echo those same sentiments, and will be supporting this ordinance and believe that it's a step in the right direction for a healthier, more well community. Any comment from the public? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of supporting ordinance 109-14, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Moving on to ordinances for second reading. Ordinance 113-14, an ordinance providing for the issuance of $650,000 of notes by the City of Athens, Ohio, in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying part of the costs of improvements to this municipality's wastewater treatment plant and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that we consider Ordinance 113-14 under suspension of the rules.
Second.
The reason for this being is that we do have a December 12th deadline for notification on the notes.
Thank you, Member Nisley. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on suspending? We have a motion and a second for suspending the rules on Ordinance 113-14. All those in favor of suspension only, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance is under suspension.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt Ordinance 113-14.
Second.
And this, as stated in the title, is for $650,000 worth of notes for the city for their improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. This is one small component of a very large project that's, I think, close to $30 million. We will, or 50?
15.
Oh, excuse me, 15. I made it twice as much as it needed to be. But this end of it, the $650,000 is for the first part of it for the design of the improvements to the wastewater treatment plant. And the auditor's office is to be thanked, and a Hocking Valley Bank as well, for the 0.3% interest rate that we were able to get on this particular note. So thank you.
Thank you, Member Nisley. We have a motion and a second to adopt the ordinance. Any comments? All those in favor of supporting the ordinance, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. Adopted. Ordinance 114-14, an ordinance providing for the issuance of $150,000 of notes by the City of Athens, Ohio, in anticipation of the issuance of bonds for the purpose of paying part of the costs of acquiring a new fire truck and related equipment and declaring an emergency, introduced by Councilmember Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I request that we consider suspension of the rules for Ordinance 114-14. The reason for this being the same as for the previous one, that we have a due date of December 12th approaching for us.
Thank you, Member Nisley. We have a motion and a second for suspension only. All those in favor of suspending the rules, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The rules have been suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of Ordinance 114-14.
Second.
And this, as stated, is for the issuance of $150,000 of notes in payment down of the ladder truck that was purchased several years ago by the City of Athens. This most recent payment this year being a combination of money represented by annual donation from Ohio University towards the purchase of this truck. So as we figured the math on how much to pay this year, we figured in that $50,000 donated by the Ohio University, plus then a city contribution. So we're paying this down once again, thanks to the auditor and Hocking Valley Bank for a 0.3% interest rate on the note.
Thank you, Member Nicely. Is there any comment on the ordinance? We have a motion to adopt and a second. All those in favor of adopting the ordinance, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Ordinance 116-14, an ordinance authorizing the Service Safety Director to enter into an LPA, Federal Local Let Project Agreement, with the Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for construction of a bike path from Armitage Road to Columbus Road, Project 271, and declaring an emergency. Ordinance 118-14, an ordinance to stop imposition of the community center income tax levy authorized by Ordinance 137-95, effective January 1st, 2016, and amending Athens City Code Title 15, Chapter 15.01, Income Tax, Section 15.01.03, Imposition of Tax, introduced by all council members.
And Mr. President, I move to amend Ordinance 118-14.
Second.
And the reason for this being the clarification of some of the language in the ordinance. We discussed last week that our clerk of council was helpful in finding for us notes from our bond counsel that suggested we include reference to the reason for the ordinance, and the reason being that we're going to be able to stop the ordinance on December 31st, 2015, so that there will not be a one-year overlap on the 0.1% income tax for arts, parks, and recreation. And so what we're doing is we're adding one sentence, a whereas, that there will be sufficient funds to retire the city's debt on the community center without imposing the tax during the 2016 calendar year. So that sentence is to be added to the ordinance.
Thank you. Any comment on the amendment? So we have a motion to amend and a second. All those in favor of amending the ordinance signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been amended and then, correct me if I'm wrong, read for the first time. Correct. Okay. Moving on to Ordinance 119-14, an ordinance authorizing the city auditor to deposit 70% of the transient guest tax revenue collected from January 1st, 2015 through December 31st, 2017 into the tourism fund, introduced by Councilmember Nicely. Moving on to ordinances for first reading. Ordinance 120-14, an ordinance to make appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures of the City of Athens, Ohio, during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2014, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Who would be speaking on this?
I can begin to introduce some of the information, though the vast amount of the work on this has been done by Mayor Weil and the administration and the auditor's office. So my thanks to them. And it was draft of this was distributed to council members last week. This is the budget that the city will be operating under in 2015. Given also consideration of the fact, as reported by the auditor, that our revenue has a very, very small increase, so we're basically trying to operate with a flat budget. The budget total for general funds will be $13.4 million, and then the total of all accounts that the city operates with is a total of $44.5 million for the next coming fiscal year.
I point out the 44 million is Usually we're running around 33, but most of that is the cost of the wastewater treatment plant rolled into it because we're on the second portion of it. So that's where you're going to see the uptick in that sense. Also, there's, I'm trying to remember the other ones. What's the other one? Oh, the bridge, of course, the bike bridge. That's going to be incorporated in that. We've had to put the money in for that, too. That would be under, I think it's under streets as well, if my memory is correct. So those are one of the things why there is a higher amount than normal in the past years. With working with this, I pretty much looked at requests from the various departments, referring to the auditor's report on our estimated revenue and certified resources. I think I kept it under there, unless you see some clunkers there, Kathy. The requests, most of the time I try leaning back if they're requesting too much. Some of the departments are asking for the moon. Other ones will be contingent on whether the resources are coming in during the year. And again, it's as you know, every appropriation makes this a work in progress because you appropriate something in the next 2 months and it'll change, those numbers change. So this is the guidelines of what we want to do. If you notice it, out of the general fund, see, the police are running about 27% of the general fund. The fire is running about 24.8, 25. If you look at household personnel, is around 74% of that. Again, most of this is funded by income tax, but of course other revenues go into their tickets, processes, contributions from the other departments into the other administration, into other admin, which is the 101, 120 line. I don't know what else to tell you on that. We expect probably an uptick along the way with tourism. I don't know if the increase in the water fees is incorporated in the estimated revenue, because that, I think you gave that in November, and I think you decided early October, late October, and put it in place November, late November. So this is what we have.
One question. Does the budget for fire training stay the same, or is there a little uptick in that?
I added some more, but not a lot. Well, as time goes on. I know they have, I just signed a travel training request for next year's appropriation, actually, for some travel and training and leadership for the lieutenants. So yes, we'll be putting some of that in there. Yeah, I usually are pretty liberal with the training. There's a process, checks and balances. It actually has to go to the department, the human resource director, and the concept there is what you have is you have a checks and balances. But I think every time you actually add to training, it improves the efficiency and productivity of the employee. And since this is pretty much an education city, I kind of lean towards being, let him train whenever possible. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. In the sense that they had a lot of on-the-job training a while ago, but it's good to have that kind of training in advance.
It's always hard to anticipate what kind of training you're going to get. I mean, just a week before they were doing exercises. I'm sure you saw in the paper of extracting people from school buses.
Exactly. Yeah.
They usually have at least every couple of years a training for how to get into a building when it's going to collapse and shore it up. If they have the opportunity of doing that. And they bring in the other volunteer fire departments in general in the region, so they have a chance to actually pool their knowledge and work together. Right. There's a little bit of difference between doing a training on an exercise versus a real thing, though. Exactly. I think they all realize that.
And frankly, we do have to weigh these budget requests because when you come in requesting twice the amount of your regular annual budget for specific items like training, we just have to gauge that because there's training that we can do in-house. There's training that could be staggered in terms of that. So we can't reach all their needs. We just keep trying to do the best we can.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. I believe Member Pappy also had a question.
I know that we spent some money with the group out of Cleveland that was looking into our income tax and putting out the net and that whole thing. And I know we have many, many more contractors right now in the city with construction, for instance. And I know there's no way, I'm just putting this out there that we have talked with Ohio University about in their contracts trying to make those contractors aware that we do have an income tax in the city if you're working here. And
And so I just wanted to put that back out there, that I hope that that has come up with your conversations when you meet and have the meetings and discuss those kind of things. I know we discussed it one time openly, but that is a source of revenue that we may or may not be getting, and we don't know whether we're going to get.
It indeed has, and I've brought that back up. I think I've taken it to the level that I'm allowed to in terms of knowledge, that Steve Goulding absolutely weighed in and was dealing directly with the Director of Procurement, so I have to defer to Auditor Hecht.
Well, it's kind of hard in some ways because income tax information is totally confidential.
Right.
And so we can't get too specific when talking to anyone. But I appreciate you bringing that up because when we contracted with CCA, and it wasn't necessarily just contractors, but most of the people just didn't realize that they should be paying local income taxes. Not everybody has that. And so we actually have just been recently talking about putting something out there, a new PSA to remind people that there is a local income tax. We have a pretty transient community, and we are still working with CCA. And so as far as working with OU, Paula has worked really hard in trying to make those contacts, but it's been difficult. And I wouldn't say we're quite where we'd like to be, but we have made some progress actually just recently. However, that's basically then the tax administrator dealing with OU directly for information. It's a one-way street, I'm afraid. If they give us something, we just take it. We can't comment, and we can't give anything back to them or anyone else once they give it to us. So yeah, just recently, Paula has really tried hard for years to get something going there. And we've tried to reach out too, but it didn't seem to be. I guess we needed a service safety director to step up and put that out there. So I think we're getting there.
And that's a good point, considering that 74% of our general fund revenue then is devoted to salaries for city staff, for our fire and police and street workers. And so
and that's how the general fund is obviously the whole city. Our major source of revenue is income tax.
And I contend it was a direct result of the conversation that council had with the president and his chiefs of staff, and that's indeed why the follow-up is occurring. So hopefully.
I appreciate the follow-up. Thank you.
Yeah, I thank you as well. He's asking the question.
Any other questions on the budget?
Yeah, I just had a quick question about our carryover, just from this year to next year. We look like we're doing okay, it sounds like.
Yes.
Okay. I know we typically like to
I
have.
think we'll be fine. We won't, just be rolling in the dough in the general fund, but we'll have enough to pay our bills in the beginning of the year. And actually, the mayor's, general fund budget is very close to last year's, which is helpful, that there are no big increases that we have to worry about funding. So I think we'll be fine.
Thank you.
I would like to mention, again, the revenue always goes up and down depending on constructions in terms of transient contractors. Also, I behoove you as council to be looking forward to the 5-year capital plan that Director Stone put together, because that's how we'll be marching forward in terms of the big ticket items. We've been lucky so far because we've spent a lot of time chasing those grants, whether it's 80% or even 50%. It's fortunate we have a pretty active staff, especially head of staff, to actually track that stuff down and say this will fit, this won't. I kind of leave it up to them because they know that the mix that works is best. But you realize the Richland Avenue corridor has been many years in the making, and we're still not there yet. But whether it's the bike bridge or other construction cycles, even West Union this year was leveraged by outside construction, and that's what we're going to see happen here.
You mentioned Richland Avenue South, and I'm just curious, is Richland Avenue South part of that bump as well that we're seeing in street?
In the 2015 budget, he went ahead and put all those grants.
That's what
Hence that big, large number at the bottom.
I suspected that.
Thank you. Any other comments? Thank you, Member Nicely. Moving on to ordinance 121-14, an ordinance authorizing staffing levels, a non-union pay scale and slotting for the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2015, repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith and declaring an emergency. This is introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Who will be speaking?
I can begin to present the information.
Thank you, Member Nicely.
And thanks to City Administration and our Human Resources Director for the information presented in this. This does call, as you can see on the summary page on the text, for a 2% pay increase for non-union personnel. And then attached to that document are several pages with the detail of the staffing levels in the different departments within the city administration. So some positions have moved from part-time to three-quarter time. You'll notice the law directors, the position that's been a temporary assignment, an appointment that we approved earlier this year, that's now reflected in the staffing levels. There have been some changes in personnel, the position titles, from an example in the police department, from a data clerk to an entry operator in the police department. And then also in parking enforcement, several titles added in. The planner's position title has been changed to city planner rather than just planner. And then the other thing of note would be the part-time and seasonal employees, that the pay scale for them has been moved to $2 above minimum wage to $3 per hour above minimum wage. And so those are the major changes that we have here.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
The grand total of employees reflected on this at the final page is 76 employees, and that's of approximately, I think, 162 total city employees that we have.
Thank you, Member Nice. Moving on to ordinance 122-14. An ordinance adopting a fringe benefits package for non-union personnel within the City of Athens and repealing all ordinances inconsistent therewith and declaring an emergency. Introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
And I can review some of the details for ordinance 122-14.
Thank you.
This is the fringe benefit package for non-union personnel. It's a 24-page document. I'm not going to go through it page by page. Many of the changes that have been made have been, I won't say clerical, but language clarification. The Human Resource Director has been changed to the term Human Resources, where the number 3/4 was the number, it's now spelled out. I will highlight probably about 6 changes so you have a sense of the kinds of things that have been changed. On page 7, when employees who are entitled to their vacation want to take the balance of that, rather than going to the department head or service safety director, they will go to the supervisor. And some of these changes, I might also add, are a reflection of the actual practice within City Council, so it's clarifying it in that way. Life and accidental death and dismemberment is on page 9. That spells out that that's full-time employees and elected officials are entitled to that $25,000 accidental death and dismemberment policy upon hire by the city. On page 11, down under item C towards the bottom of the page, you'll notice that employees are responsible for managing current payroll deductions while on leave without pay. That language has been added in. Several other changes, if you'll turn back to page 16, sick leave or vacation leave requests are subject to approval, just making sure our policies are spelled out so that correct supervision and procedures, protocols are followed. On the donation of sick leave, language has been added to say that each calendar year, An employee may donate up to 40 hours of accumulated and unused sick leave to other employees, so long as the recipient's absence qualifies as an event under the Family Medical Leave Act. So clarification on that existing policy. And then back on page 19, under items 19C, full-time employees and three-quarter-time employees, their permanent part-time employees shall receive holiday pay regardless of the employee's work shift and schedule. And I think those are the main changes, other than in some cases capitalizing position titles. Yes.
I would mention that this is worked in conjunction with the Human Resource Director and the Auditor's Office to correct a lot of the issues that were here. And again, a lot of them, as you say, were clerical, but just to clarify what the procedures were and how they relate. So it was a cooperative effort.
Yeah, and a lot of work. Thank you very much.
Any other comments? Thank you, Member Nisley. Moving on to Ordinance 123-14, an ordinance authorizing a contract extension of the city's third-party administrator for medical insurance and prescription coverage and declaring an emergency, introduced by the Finance and Personnel Committee.
And I can speak briefly to this. This is a renewal of a contract that we have with United Medical Resources, which is an affiliate of United Healthcare, the company with whom the city engages to cover all of our health and dental insurance for our full-time employees. And this policy then would become effective January 1, 2015 through December 31st, 2015. And it covers both the extension of the contract for third-party administrator and also the prescription coverage.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any comments? Ordinance 124-14, an ordinance amending ordinances 04-09, 03-11, and 124-12, and the Athens City Code establishing salaries for certain elected officials, introduced by all members of council. Thank you, Member Nisley.
Yes, I'll speak briefly to it. The information here is for the positions of mayor, auditor, city council persons, president of council, the law director, and the treasurer. Those are all the elected positions for the city. And what is proposed after some discussion and review of the items by the administration and the auditor's office is a 2% increase per year. In years past, the mayor has varied from 1 to 0.5%, I believe, on the percentage increase. There were several years where city council members, 2 years, that there was no increase. The treasurer's office has not had an increase for quite some time. So these would be 2% increases. They would be effective with beginning January 1, 2016. So that will be the next elected term for these employees. And I might add, I think for the treasurer it begins, I can make sure, it begins 2018 for the treasurer's salary. And what we have done is there was a period of time actually where there was an error, an oversight on council's part when the increases were put through. And it hadn't been increased. And so effective 2018, and that one will run through 2023. Yes?
This may be an error, but shouldn't these read 2016 as opposed to commencing?
And I did the same thing when I was reading it through tonight. But Clerk of Council verified for us that what that does is it says that the rate that has already been identified for 2015, which is in place, is what is listed here, effective January 1, 2015. So that's the rate that's already on the books, and then there will be no increase until January 1, 2016.
And the only other difference, of course, is the treasurer's, which doesn't start till the
2018.
18, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any questions or comments pertaining to the ordinance? Any public comment? Ordinance 125-14, an ordinance amending the 2014 appropriation ordinance introduced by Councilmember Nisley.
Thank you, Mr. President. This particular ordinance, I request that we consider under suspension of the rules.
Second.
The reason being that we do have several of these expenses that are needed to be paid immediately before the end of the year.
There is a motion and a second for suspension only. Mayor?
In particular, one is we're trying to get looking at medical and prescription benefit plan consultants, mostly with the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, as people know it. The situation is changing. We want to get a handle on it and bring in an outside consultant to look at that. And of course, the other ones are for the cleaning of the community center, which will be closed for an extended period of time. I forget what weeks, third week in December.
22nd through the 28th, I believe.
So you won't be able to jog around the track for that length of time because they'll be cleaning everything. And it's nice to have those dollars in place to do that.
Thank you, Mayor. And my understanding, too, with the community center is it's never been closed that length of time for the cleaning and replacement of some of the materials. So
I think normally they've done it like a 2-day quick cleaning, but this is going to be more extensive.
Thank
as well
you.
as replacement of equipment, I believe.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second for suspension only. All those in favor of suspending the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been suspended.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt ordinance 125-14.
Second.
And as the mayor has explained, these are for several expenses. One for the general fund for medical and prescription benefit plan consultant. That would be $20,000. And then $20,000 to the recreation fund for a pool concept consult. $18,000 to the community center for the deep cleaning or high dusting and also plumbing services. And then $5,000 for building improvements to the locker room. And so those are the expenses in this appropriation ordinance.
Thank you, Member Nisley. Any questions or comments? We have a motion and a second to adopt ordinance 125-14. All those in favor of adopting the ordinance, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, same sign. The ordinance has been adopted. Thank you. Moving on to ordinance 126-14, an ordinance authorizing an extension of the current franchise agreement with Ohio Power Company for use of this, I'm guessing that's a...
Yes,
for use of the city right-of-way as authorized by ordinance 143-13 and declaring an emergency. And this is introduced by Councilmember Fall.
Thank you, Mr. President. We discussed this last week. It's a straightforward extension of the franchise agreement that we have with AEP. This has been done several times in the past. This would also give us time to look at other opportunities to improve contracts with the use of our right-of-ways.
Any questions? Mayor's office?
No, good.
Thank you, Mayor. Ordinance 127-14, an ordinance authorizing the expenditure of funds for engineering services associated with the North Congress Street Sanitary Sewer Project number 289 pursuant to ordinance 108-14, introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the title infers that this is an authorization of expenditure on an existing ordinance, 108-14, on a very old sewer line, one of the older ones in the city that has a lot of cross connections that are tied in with our sewer system. So this will begin the planning for that project, which will be a fairly extensive project, I would imagine.
Yeah. Thank you, Member Patterson. Any comments? Moving on to ordinance 128-14, an ordinance declaring certain equipment at the community center no longer needed for a municipal purpose, introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Again, this is an ordinance to allow for the disposal of equipment not being used anymore. It's weight equipment from the community center, from the gym. Some of the equipment is 20 years old or so, some less, but it's equipment that's kind of reached the point at which there's really no trade-in value on this equipment, so therefore the only other options is any company that might be able to work out some kind of deal with in terms of trade-in, it's just going to be disposed of.
Thank you, Member Patterson.
I have a question. I'm reading the ordinance here, section 2, the city safety director is hereby authorized to dispose of said equipment by sealed bids. So I'm seeing a plural there. That means each piece of equipment will have its own individual bid, or are you going to get rid of it as a lot? I just wonder what the procedure would be.
Go ahead.
It can be,
How could you make the most
it can
money?
be piecemeal, right, exactly. So we'll have to see. I mean, this is not new to Rich's operation down there at the community center by receiving and requesting sealed bids. So I could see a mix match, a component, one entity, maybe a regional other playground operation will select their equipment and others will that. So it'll be the highest dollar.
Well, hope so.
Actually, we requested what methodology they wanted, and they said sealed bid. The assumption is that they could parse it out by the object. It wouldn't be much more difficult than by the lot. Having participated in sealed bids before, I suspect you probably can do better by doing it by the piece. But again, that's more paperwork.
Right.
If you remember, we've in the past disposal of equipment, we've done auction, donation, sealed bid. So those are the options. Obviously, he has an idea this would be the best way for him to do it. I don't think an auction is really that valuable to do it for this type of equipment.
Probably not. Thanks.
Thank you, Member Reisner. Thank you, Mayor Weil. Any other questions or comments? Ordinance 129-14, an ordinance authorizing a contract increase for operation of public access television station for the city of Athens, Ohio, introduced by Councilmember Patterson.
Thank you, Mr. Butler. This is an ordinance to, among other things, increase the salary associated with the public access television. Hasn't been a pay raise associated with those positions since 2011, so it's been a long time. And there's also, if I'm not mistaken, equipment that's involved in this as well. There was earlier equipment purchases this year for which they were very thankful and being used. So this is keeping our public access television, number one, up to date, but also having responsible salary increases for those members as well.
Thank you. Any comments or questions?
I would point out that this is, they talk about PEG, which is public education and government channels and part of the franchise package. And this is a public aspect. Anybody who can hold a camera, they take a lesson, they want to broadcast. It's a pretty good, venue for our citizens to get the word out, or even to practice being TV directors, I guess. I think it's a worthwhile activity.
And I would also add that it's operational, like rent goes up, utilities have gone up, so it's also to cover those operational increases.
I just wanted to add that when he was here last time explaining that he was going to begin reaching out to the schools and things like that, and I think that's a really important piece because there is a lot more of that with social media and all that kind of thing. So getting some guidance in how to do those kinds of things through our public access TV, I think, would be So,
Thank you, Madam Happy. Any other comments? Ordinance 130-14, an ordinance authorizing right-of-way acquisition, construction, and construction engineering of a bike path from Armitage to Columbus Road. This is project number 271, introduced by Councilmember Pappy.
thank you. We spent a considerable amount of time last week discussing this and discussing where the funds were going to come from. I know that there was a couple requests there at the end of the evening in terms of engineering and that kind of thing and where it was coming from, and that was fully vetted. I don't know if you would like to just say that out loud here this evening in terms of the engineering.
Well, I think what we tried to gather all the information as Jessica Dine, our wonderful project manager, did to outline the fact that are receiving over $1.2 million in grant funding that ultimately result in a $470,000 match, for construction. So I know it costs, but I guess when we weigh it against the grants that we've received, we are definitely requesting that we get authorization to move forward and actually build those projects.
And I think just to make a point that was mentioned last week several times is that when you receive grants of this amount in for these types of things, if you say no, that doesn't look so favorably on the next time that you also go in for receiving a grant. So it's kind of it's an important piece to infrastructure improvements and doing these kinds of projects. I would just say that this appropriation and these acquisitions will come out of several different funds. The street fund, the recreation fund were the two main areas. And then monies have to be moved because we received the grant money. So
Just a comment that, like other activities the city's involved with, this particular project links to our pedestrian and bicycle plan. It also relates to the city comprehensive plan, and also, as the mayor mentioned, Director of Public Works, Andy Stone's long-term plan. He has a 5-year plan that he's presented to council members for review. So it's, I think, solidly based on plans and goals and visions of the city.
thank you.
Yes, and I would acknowledge as well, too, that this has been, a 2 or 3 year preparation, so this just didn't show up out of thin air. This is something that's taken a lot of time and energy and resources to begin to make reality. Thank you. Moving to a one reading resolution. Resolution R15-14, a resolution supporting a statewide and national ban on non-therapeutic uses of antibiotics in livestock production, introduced by all council members. Who will be speaking on this?
I'll introduce this.
Thank you, Member Cox.
This is something that we've discussed briefly and was brought to us by the organization Food and Water Watch, and a number of citizens have contacted us individually to urge us to pass this resolution in support of congressional approval of H.R. 1150, which is Preservation of Antibiotics for Medical Treatment Act, and Senate Resolution 1256, the Preventing of Antibiotic Resistance Acts, which propose with bipartisan support to preserve the effectiveness of medically important antimicrobials used in the treatment of human and animal diseases by limiting non-therapeutic uses of antibiotics in livestock production, and further express support for the statewide and national ban of non-therapeutic uses of antibiotics in livestock production. And so in general, we believe, and at the encouragement of our Sustainability Commission, that this contributes to food security in our region, as well as public health and sustainability, since 80% of antibiotics are currently used in the production of livestock, and we believe that our food security and public health would be better served by limiting non-therapeutic uses of antibiotics.
Thank you, Member Cochran. Any other questions or comments from council members? I will acknowledge that one of the aspects of the resolution is that we're asking the clerk to send a certified copy of this resolution to Senator Sherrod Brown, Blue Gentile, Congressman Steve Stivers, Representative Debbie Phillips, and to the Food and Water Watch. We need a friendly reminder, yes, we do need a motion and a second. Member Cochran.
I move to adopt Resolution 1514.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion to adopt and a second to support the resolution. If there's no other comments, all those in favor of adopting the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. The resolution has been adopted. Thank you. Any announcements and other business for council? Well, I'm guessing we'll be meeting in committee meetings a week from tonight.
Be a special session.
Special session next week.
That's okay. Is there a special? You're requesting a special session?
Yes.
Tradition.
Okay.
Do
Tradition.
readings of everything, second reading of this, unless you want to do one in Christmas time.
Sure, that'd be fun. I have a nice elf outfit. So a special session.
Can we discuss that?
Member Nisley?
And if we do have committee meetings,
We'll
may
let
not
you
be
know.
any need.
Hopefully we don't.
Whatever that is, it's going to be rather emergent and urgent, but.
Any other committee meetings being requested? Any other announcements or business?
Watch the weather. Be careful out there.
Thank you, Mayor. Any, at this moment, too, we offer opportunity for citizens to speak on legislative items and city services that were not covered on the agenda. Anyone wishing to speak, please approach the podium. Okay, I will acknowledge that we will be moving into an executive session after the meeting. It is approximately 2 minutes till 8. I'm guessing 15 to 20 minutes should be enough time for... We do. Yeah. So as much time as needed for questions. I'll be taking autographs. We will be moving into executive session after that. And we need to state that we'll be talking about collective bargaining. So to acknowledge who we wish to be present. A motion.
I move that we move into executive session after a short question and answer period with our audience. With the auditor, all that table.
The mayor.
For the record.
City prosecutor. And everybody at this table except for Pat Langdon.
You have a second?
Second.
Please signify, starting with Member Reisner, please signify.
Aye.
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 Thank you. Okay. We will now be taking questions.
We need to end, we already end council.